he going to come back in game 2? Is KD going to play here?
It was a matter, it seemed like a pain tolerance and being able to maneuver and move himself around laterally in game 1. Luckily for Houston, LA, and us, these games are stretched out a lot more in the first round. You have a lot more longer breaks. But here's the thing, y'all. You got to see a little bit with Stephen Curry. He had that great game against the Clippers. He turned back the clock. The next game, he looked like a 38-year-old. Kevin Durant has played 78 games this year, and he is 37 years old. Old man injuries happen to old men. I don't know why we keep expecting things other than what's in front of us. I know LeBron is the anomaly. Let's put LeBron somewhere else.
Fair.
But Kevin Durant is 37 years old and has had to carry this offense all season long.
To his point, they play Sunday, then Tuesday, then Friday. So there are a lot of days off in here. If he doesn't come back or isn't why are you doing this?
You're right. No is the answer.
The Lakers are going to win the series.
You don't need to get that question out. If KD's out, then it's a wrap. That's done.
Okay, so now all of a sudden, hold on, let me get a little excited here.
Here we go.
Let me get a little excited. So now all of a sudden, the Lakers, with a lot of rest and a lot of time, come out of this series, and all of a sudden, there's Luka, and he's back, and he's feeling a little better, and all of a sudden maybe he's on the floor again in a round 2 scenario, and LeBron has looked awfully good here. I mean, are we getting a little interesting with the Lakers?
Yes, it's interesting because they would be further ahead than most of us thought they could potentially get.
But they're going to get OKC in the next round. So, right? That's
I literally supposed to be like, Greedy, who are they going to get in this next round?
See, that's where falling from the 3 to the 4 will wind up being their undoing. Not that San Antonio looks easy to beat, but I would have given them some conceivable chance.
You know what this is, Greeny? I'm going to borrow an NFL term from you guys. This is overreaction Monday.
Okay, go.
We are overreacting to everything on these one-game sample sizes. Luckily, this is not March Madness. These 7-game series take on a life of its own. The Lakers hit a lot of three-point shots. Luka hit a lot of shots in game 1. Houston's defense did not come through. Now, granted, I believe KD is going to come back this series. Granted, they're without their starting center, Steven Adams, without Fred VanVleet. They were a troubled team to begin with in round 1. I'm just saying, let's not act like
it's an overreaction that if KD is not available to play, the Lakers are going to win.
But we're
that's not overreaction.
No. I'm saying in general.
I feel you.
I'm speaking fluidly.
Oh, okay.
I'm speaking fluidly.
Me and Greeny dealt with the facts.
He said, let's get excited.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, let's at least get interested in what the Lakers are doing, and let's at least say this. Can we at least just say this? And we just live in a terrible world now because we live in a world where you cannot praise someone on social media anymore without it automatically being turned into a suggestion that you are denigrating someone else. But what I posted yesterday on social media is just simply true. LeBron James is playing at a level at his age that we have never ever seen in basketball before. The greatest postseason performance by any player over the age of 40 in NBA history, and it's not close, is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 87 playoffs. The Lakers played 18 games. They won the championship that year. He averaged 19 and 7. I watched every minute of every game they played in those playoffs. Kareem is an all-time great. He had 2 first-ballot Hall of Famers in their prime on that team in Magic Johnson and James Worthy. Kareem was terrific. He was the third option on those teams. LeBron James is playing. He won't make it to 18 games in this postseason, but he is playing at a level a year older than Kareem was then, at a level we have never seen. So let's take a moment and just appreciate, without turning it into a debate about anything, just take a moment to appreciate that what we are seeing is something we have literally never seen before.
I think you're right to point that out, Greeny. I think it is appropriate. And yes, while you can enjoy it, the reality of the last 4 seasons or so say that the question is not, can we get these glimpses of brilliance that have been sustained over his long tenure career? It's how sustainable are they at this point? And
on a given night, he can be as great as he ever was. The question is, what happens the night after that?
Right. Well, I mean, Kareem had Worthy and Magic, and he was supposed to have Luka Doncic, and we'll see.
Not some of the most competitive games, but we're going to start with Rockets-Lakers. No KD in this one. Lakers with a nice win, 107-98. LeBron James, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 13 assists. Luke Kennard was the man of the hour. Awesome. 27 points, 5 of 5 from 3. Şengün finishes with 19. But the 13 assists, I believe 8 were in the first quarter, which is mind-blowing. But Derek Fisher said that LeBron is in his Magic Johnson era and that the Lakers could still win a title with him leading the way. That is a heck of a statement, Boogie. I mean, winning a title is one thing, deep playoff run maybe. What would you give him?
I agree with the second part as far as, him playing at this level, obviously with, two of the other main starters out. I think this is only a plus for the Lakers, especially with him having to carry the load as of right now. But say he's in his Magic Johnson era, it's kind of a knock to LeBron. Nothing against Magic, but I take it as a knock to LeBron. This is a guy that's proven since he stepped foot in this league to be one of the greatest playmakers to ever touch the floor. So, and it's kind of funny because this was something that was kind of frowned upon early on in his career as being the guy that likes to make the right play, being the guy that gets everybody involved, making the guys around him better. And we fast forward to 20 years in the league, 20 plus years later in the league, and he's still doing that exact same thing. And it being something that, his playmaking being able to be something that controls an entire playoff game, even at this age in his career. So I think this is something that has been, kind of frowned upon, and now it's something that, people are looking at as a valuable asset. Which is mind-blowing to me. But this is something that he's done time and time again. This is part of his identity as a basketball player. I think that's why we can sit here and say this is one of the most complete basketball players to ever play this game. And I think he proved that once again the other night against the Rockets. So, credit to Bron. And it's just incredible for him to be at this stage in his career and still be able to have an impact on the game. Not with it just being about scoring 30, 40 points, but, having 13 assists, 2 turnovers, and being a playmaker and controlling the entire playoff game. So credit to him.
Yeah, it's true that the media in his career has been critical over him almost being too passive at points and not wanting to, making the right play or wrong play at the end of a game, not being aggressive, trying to score points. But to me, the most impressive part is just how many different roles he can fill. Like, he can be the aggressive guy and go get you 30 points. He can play, small ball where he's the 5-man. He's point forward, like Team USA kind of guard. Like last night, not last night, 2 nights ago, you could tell he was just trying to get everyone involved. He was trying to get guys going early, knowing that their 2 best scorers are out, and it worked. Like, you see, you can get Vanderbilt a wide open shot here, get him going.
It's a real tone setter.
Spoon-fed Rui and DeAndre Ayton, who had really, really good games, and obviously Luke Kennard was just fantastic shooting the basketball. But this is the version of him that they need, and it changes every single night, and he continues to play his role at a high level.
Would you say he's like a chameleon out there?
He is whatever they need him to be. He is.
I'm about to say you can make that point because if Austin Reeves and Luka's in this lineup, you're going to see a different version of Bron. You're not going to necessarily see him be as aggressive on the offensive end and getting people involved because they wouldn't need him to get guys involved and being in the position that he is with those guys on the floor. So it was impressive just to see that. And also in a playoff game, like Houston got to take a stand, right? Like, they allowed them to do everything comfortable, and we'll get into that conversation as well. But, a guy having 8 assists in the first quarter, that sets the table for Rui to get involved. Now Luke Kennard can get some confidence. You got Aiden that was just in the right spots and was able to eat off of that as well. So it was just a great game. And like we said, the things that we criticized Bron for, now we give him the credit for it. But he was able to just make plays for everybody and set the table, and his game management is off the charts. Like, this is somebody that we've always seen in the postseason be able to manage games from quarter to quarter, from scenario to scenario. He just knows how to go out and do what needs to be done. Had the highest plus minus on his team at 41 years old. It was super impressive to see.
I think those 8 assists in the first quarter, if you were kind of half paying attention and you looked up at the screen, A, thought it was a typo, but B, it was just like, oh, so this is how we're going to do this. And if you're the Rockets, you have to be thinking, are you kidding me right now? But here's the thing, 41 years old, game 1 performance, not too shabby. What's more impressive, that, Lou, or that he gets to play in a playoff game with his kid?
Oh,
it's the performance. Obviously, every time that he and Bronny are on the floor together, it's going to be something to talk about. Like, that's super impressive. But it got to be the performance, right? We went into this series saying that without their two top guys, and that sounds crazy when we're talking about LeBron James and talking about 2 other guys being the top guys, but we were going into this saying that Houston were the favorite. It was gonna be favored in their direction, and then obviously Kevin Durant goes out. Now that kind of evens the playing field for how this series is gonna go. But for him to get everybody involved, and we talk about the supporting cast being able to step up, and be difference makers in this series come postseason, for him to get everybody involved to carry them through a game. Now in the second half, everybody confident is sky high. Like, look at Luke Kennard. Confidence is sky high because he's getting early looks. Rui can make you a big three. Marcus Smart scored in double figures. Everybody was able to make big contributions based on the confidence that LeBron gave them by sharing the basketball and getting them involved early.
Yeah, it's the performance by Mars, not even close.
Oh, I had
and
that.
Again,
Wow.
Start that.
That was the loudest
been on
one
Zoom.
yet.
It's the performance. And again, we talk about this every single night. He continues to get better. And early in the season, remember, he was like their best defender. He was diving on the floor. So he was gone from like the hustle guy from the best player to the third option to the point forward to the power forward to the center. Like, this guy has played every single role for this team, and he's overexceeded all expectations. And now they got a great 1-0 lead against a team who they were underdogs against. And obviously, Kevin Durant goes down. We didn't expect that to happen.
No,
but
we didn't.
He's missing two of his best players as well. So I don't want that to be the story that's why they won. Like, LeBron is at more of a deficit without Reeves and Luka than the Rockets are without Kevin Durant. So obviously that changed the trajectory of the game. But it shouldn't, because the Lakers are missing two best players. They're missing one. So, like, if we want to play that game, the Lakers are missing more. But it's just truly unbelievable what he did. And again, game 2 could be a different, complete situation than when game 1, and we can see him go off for 40 and have no assists. Like, that's just how good and how capable LeBron James is still at this point of his career.
The KD thing, Boogie, was so. I had friends on their way to crypto that were about to drop many, many dollars on. And as soon as the KD news dropped, they're like, we're not even worth it. So let's talk Rockets, shall we? Because on that side of things, Charles Barkley said that the Rockets were awful to watch, and Kenny Smith said they did not follow the game plan. Did Ime get out-coached by JJ? Like, what happened here?
I don't even think this is an Ime issue. I still blame it on it being a roster issue. And at this point, I believe Kevin Durant deserves even more credit than he's received this season. I think his talent, his experience, and just his overall play this season has covered up a lot of their shortcomings. And we talk about a guy like LeBron being able to control a playoff game with his playmaking ability. Just imagine if this Rockets team had an actual playmaker on the floor. We've been talking about it all year. They need a point guard, and obviously with their best player, Kevin Durant, being out, it's going to look even more awful. I don't think the guys on this roster are complementary pieces to Kevin Durant and what this Rockets team needs as far as winning right now. Now, obviously, things can change down the line, but as of right now, it's not a complete roster to me. And with Kevin Durant being out, it just made that glaring hole even bigger as far as, their shortcomings this season. So I agree with Charles. It wasn't a great showing. I don't think this is a coaching situation. Like I said, I think this is more about the roster build out, and it's not a complete or complimentary roster for the guys that are on this squad.
Yeah. Well, two things can be true. I agree with Boogie. The roster is the roster, right? And we've talked about the issues they've had all year, but from the Houston standpoint, they just didn't take anything away. I think they kind of took their foot off the gas when you're going into a series without Austin Reeves and Luka. They just probably felt like they can beat this team. They tried to outscore them. They had 27 more field goal attempts. They had 21 offensive rebounds. Everything that they were doing was predicated on the offensive end of the floor. Defensively, they allowed everybody to be too comfortable. Everybody, with the exception of Bronny, that stepped on the floor, scored and had production. Like, you allowed 9 guys to score the basketball. It's like, what are you taking away? You're not taking away anything. That was a great opportunity for you to make this game difficult for LeBron James. Instead, you allowed him to be a playmaker, and you allowed everybody to get their confidence by allowing LeBron to be a playmaker. That got to come from the top. You got to make this Lakers team uncomfortable. I didn't see that happen at all. So Boogie saying it's the roster. I think that's half of it. The other half of it is they didn't implement anything to make the Lakers uncomfortable at all in this game.
Yeah, and just offensively, I think Sengun, he's got to be better. Having 19 field goal attempts, scoring 19 points, that's not efficient enough. And again, like Boogie said, the roster, it is what it is. Like, obviously, they would be much better with a Fred VanVleet in the lineup. They got guys playing a little bit out of position with Thompson starting at point guard early. Then they got Reed Shepherd in there. And again, the offense is what it is, but I do think the shock of Kevin Durant maybe going out right before the game
That seemed like shocking.
Could have thrown him off a little bit. But this is interesting. Like, the Rockets scored just 98 points, having 27 more field goal attempts than the Lakers. Like, that's hard to do.
Seems like bad math.
That's a crazy stat. So, like, they're getting shots at the basket. They were just inefficient, and they got to be better. And if Kevin Durant doesn't play game 2, then you got to play through Sengun more. You got to get out. I'd play faster. They have so many long, athletic guys. Like, play faster and get out in transition.
Well, they play tomorrow. They better figure something out.
Which is good for. It's good that they had the time off with Kevin Durant, but it's also good for the Lakers because they're getting everyone's like, oh yeah, it's great for the Rockets. Kevin Durant. It's good for Luka and Reeves too.
Exactly.
It felt like we got ripped off a little bit. We're just very excited.
Also, do you think Kevin Durant is like not playing? Obviously, because it's hurt. They were saying he can't straighten his leg fully. Was it because of all the other major injuries that have happened, guys playing through?
What do you mean?
Like, is it a concern about this getting worse and like being like detrimental? Because I feel like he looked good.
Well,
we know the video I saw.
We know Kevin Durant. If he's available, he's going to play.
He only missed 4 games this year, which made it even more shocking. So it has to be like
it has to be something that's really bothersome because if he can play and he can lace up, especially in a playoff run, he's going to play.
I mean, he's over there seething during.
For sure. So I would listen.
Does he play game 2?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Absolutely. If he can.
You watch his warm up,
absolutely normal. Especially with them being down 0-1 now.
Kevin, you must.
You can't go down 0-2 and try to get in there. So
okay.
Kevin Durant ain't the type of guy to sit for a hangnail. So
that's what I'm saying. And he only missed 4 games. It's got to be bad.
He can play.
Yeah, he's not doing it. He's not. Rockets are favorites. Is that what just got said in my ear? Wow. Okay. Well,
they're favored.
4.5 points. We shall see. Let's get to some Magic Pistons. Chandler? Maybe.
Don't look now.
I mean, I got people telling me Chandler was right. Yeah, they are.
Kevin Durant has a good chance of playing in Game 2 on Tuesday. That is the update that arrived today, and that changes everything about how this series looks heading into the next 48 hours. Shannon Sharpe already said he does not see the Lakers winning Game 2 if Durant plays. And he made that statement before anyone knew Durant was tracking toward a return. Luka Doncic was officially snubbed from the MVP finalists list on Sunday, with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, and Victor Wembanyama taking the 3 spots, despite Doncic leading the NBA in scoring, ranking 3rd in assists, and carrying the Lakers to 53 wins, while Reeves missed 31 games and LeBron missed 22. Kevin Durant fired back at a heckling Lakers fan on his way to the tunnel with a one-liner graphic enough that it cannot be repeated in polite company. Luke Kennard already outscored the entirety of Gabe Vincent's playoff production as a Laker in a single game. 27 points versus 21 total across 10 playoff games. The Game 1 win vindicated Rob Pelinka for letting Dorian Finney-Smith walk to Houston for $52.7 million. DFS did not even enter the rotation in the game, where his replacement trio of LaRavia, Ayton, and Smart helped the Lakers win by 9. Marcus Smart compared this Lakers team to his 2018 Celtics. And Adam Silver said LeBron is doing things 25-year-olds cannot do. Tuesday is coming, Durant is coming back, and the Lakers just proved they are not who anyone thought they were. Let us talk about all of it. Hit that like button right now, because this channel covered every angle of this series before anyone else, and the next video drops the moment the final buzzer sounds on Game 2. You cannot afford to miss it. So let us begin talking firstly about the Kevin Durant situation heading into Game 2, because the good chance update that USA Today's Ben DuBose reported today in the immediate aftermath of Game 1 is simultaneously the most important piece of information available for understanding what Tuesday night actually looks like, and the most direct challenge to the specific version of confidence that the Lakers earned on Saturday. Durant bumped knees with a teammate during Wednesday's practice, sustaining a contusion in the patella tendon area above the knee, an injury that Ime Udoka described not as a pain tolerance issue, but as a mobility problem, meaning Durant's body was physically incapable of generating the specific movement patterns that his offensive game requires, rather than simply unwilling to absorb discomfort. He warmed up extensively before Game 1, went through a prolonged shooting session and pre-game preparation routine, and made the decision that his mobility was insufficient approximately 90 minutes before tip-off. A decision that was both medically responsible and organizationally devastating for a Houston team that shot 37.6% from the field without him, posted its lowest point total in over a month, and lost a game that the pre-series narrative suggested they should have won comfortably. By Game 2 on Tuesday, Durant will have had 6 full days to recover from a contusion that Udoka described as hopefully a one-game thing, and the specific recovery trajectory for a patellar tendon contusion over 6 days of rest for a player with Durant's medical infrastructure and conditioning level is meaningfully more favorable than the emergency decision made 2 hours before tip-off on Saturday. Shannon Sharpe said on his Nightcap show that he does not see the Lakers winning Game 2 if Kevin Durant plays. And while Sharpe's broader critique of the Game 1 performance included some legitimate points, the specific framing of "I do not see them winning" deserves the same skeptical engagement that every confident prediction about this series has deserved since the moment Doncic tore his hamstring in Oklahoma City. The Lakers shot 61% from the field in Game 1 against one of the 5 best defenses in the league without Durant in the lineup. They held Houston to 37.6% shooting through a defensive scheme that specifically exploited Amen Thompson's perimeter limitations to generate numerical advantages throughout their coverage rotations. The question is not whether a healthy Durant makes the Rockets dramatically better. He obviously does. His 26-point average on 52% shooting and 27.1% usage rate are not replaceable by anyone currently available on the Houston roster. The question is whether the specific competitive identity the Lakers demonstrated in Game 1, the defensive chaos, the half-court execution, the clutch time awareness, is durable against a Durant-led offense that the Lakers have already successfully competed against twice during the regular season, including both of their 2 regular season wins against Houston coming in games where Doncic averaged 33.7 points across the 3 matchups and generated the defensive gravity that made every other Lakers action easier. Without Doncic in Game 2, Durant's return changes the competitive balance dramatically. But the Lakers' 13-0 historical record in first-round series after taking a 1-0 lead under LeBron James is the specific data point that the narrative about Durant's return cannot simply dismiss. And the organizational identity this team displayed in Game 1 is not a one-night accident. I believe Durant returns for Game 2 in some capacity, that his mobility limitations will be partially visible even if he suits up, and that the specific challenge of defending a compromised Kevin Durant while generating the same offensive efficiency the Lakers produced in Game 1 is the exact competitive test that separates a fluky Game 1 result from the beginning of a genuine series upset. The Shannon Sharpe critique that arrived before Durant's return update is the specific piece of honest analytical pushback that the Lakers fan base needed to hear after a Game 1 performance that generated more celebration than the complete picture warranted, because the specific numbers Sharpe cited are real. They are uncomfortable, and they describe genuine competitive vulnerabilities that Game 2 will expose at a dramatically higher level the moment Durant takes the floor in a Lakers uniform. The Lakers committed 18 turnovers to Houston's 13. They shot 65% from the free throw line, making only 17 of 26 attempts from the stripe, a percentage that represents the specific category of execution failure that tends to compound into competitive problems against quality opponents in close games. They scored only 17 points in the second quarter, in a game where they shot 61% from the field, which means the specific distribution of their efficiency was uneven enough to create stretches where the Rockets could have shifted momentum against a more competent offensive unit. And they won by only 9 points, despite shooting 23 percentage points better from the field than Houston, and 20 percentage points better from 3. A differential that should have produced a more comfortable margin, and that reflects the specific carelessness Sharp identified as the thematic problem even in the win. Every one of these criticisms is accurate and legitimate. The question is whether they are fatal or correctable, and the honest answer is that they are correctable, because 18 turnovers against a Houston defense that recorded 13 steals is partly a reflection of the Rockets' defensive quality rather than exclusively a Lakers execution failure, because free throw shooting is the most correctable single-game inefficiency available, and because the second quarter scoring drought that produced 17 points did not cost the Lakers the game or even the lead. Sharp's broader point that Durant's return transforms Game 2 from a manageable challenge into an entirely different competitive proposition is the one that the Lakers fan base needs to sit with honestly, rather than dismissing as external negativity from someone who doubted the team before the series began. Marcus Smart's response to the same challenge is more instructive than any analytical rebuttal could be. The defining moment of Game 1 for him was not a specific basket or a specific defensive stop, but the team's ability to stay poised when the game got chippy, when the technicals were called, when the physical intensity escalated beyond what a regular season game typically produces. That composure, the specific organizational character that Smart explicitly compared to his 2018 Boston Celtics team, calling this Lakers group resilient in the same way that Celtics team was resilient, dangerous, precisely because the two best players are unavailable and everyone remaining is competing without a safety net, is the intangible that no statistical projection can fully incorporate, and that Shannon Sharp's critique cannot fully account for, regardless of how legitimate his specific numbers are. Thinking about it carefully, the most honest assessment of the Lakers after Game 1 is that they won convincingly against a compromised opponent, committed enough mistakes to be genuinely vulnerable if those mistakes recur against a healthy Durant, and demonstrated enough competitive character to suggest that vulnerability is manageable rather than fatal. The Luka Doncic MVP snub is the specific organizational injustice that arrived on Sunday with the announcement that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, and Victor Wembanyama are the 3 finalists for the 2025-26 NBA MVP. And the question the article raises directly deserves engagement rather than dismissal, because the specific circumstances of Doncic's eligibility created a public perception problem that the voting process apparently absorbed, even if the statistical case for his inclusion was genuinely stronger than at least one of the 3 players who received the final spot. Doncic led the NBA in scoring at 33.5 points per game. He ranked 3rd in the entire league in assists. He finished 6th in steals. He was in the top 25 in rebounding. He led all players who appeared in at least 50 games in 3-point field goals made per game. He carried the Lakers to 53 wins in a season where Austin Reeves missed 31 games and LeBron James missed 22, which means for significant portions of the season, Doncic was functionally operating as the singular franchise player of a team competing for a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, rather than as the first option in a functional 3-star system. the NBA declared him eligible for awards through the extraordinary circumstances exception after his agent Bill Duffy argued that missing the 65-game threshold was a consequence of 2 games absent for the birth of his daughter, rather than any competitive or medical factor. The exception was granted. The eligibility was confirmed. And then the voting community apparently decided that including a player who required a special exception to qualify for consideration, even if his statistical case was stronger than the narrative suggests, created optics complicated enough to leave him outside the 3 finalists regardless of what the numbers said. The specific irony is that Doncic played more minutes than all 3 finalists despite appearing in fewer games, which means the per-minute argument for his inclusion is even stronger than the per-game argument that the games played exception framing had already made complicated. SGA, Jokic, and Wembanyama are all deserving of their finalist positions. None of them is undeserving. None of them is receiving recognition they did not earn. But the question of whether Doncic deserved to be among them rather than outside them is one that the statistical record answers affirmatively, and that the voting process apparently answered differently for reasons that the article correctly identifies as at least partially driven by optics rather than exclusively by basketball merit. I believe Doncic's exclusion from the MVP finalists is the organizational slight that will fuel his 2026-27 season in the same way that competitive slights have historically fueled the greatest individual performances in the history of this sport. And that the specific combination of the hamstring injury, the playoff absence, and the MVP snub creates a motivational architecture heading into next season that should genuinely concern every Western Conference team that has to defend him for the next 5 years. Kevin Durant firing back at a heckling Lakers fan on his way to the tunnel with a graphic one-liner is the Kevin Durant moment that could only have been produced by Kevin Durant, because no other player in the NBA carries the specific combination of competitive pride, social media sensitivity, and inability to let any perceived slight pass without a response that has defined Durant's public personality across 3 franchises and 19 professional seasons. Durant was sitting in street clothes with an ice pack on his right knee, watching his team lose a game they were supposed to win comfortably while the building celebrated around him. He was already frustrated. He was already processing the specific competitive humiliation of missing a playoff game with a practice injury while his team shot 37.6% from the field and got outscored by a roster that the entire basketball world had written off before the series began. And then one particular fan in purple and gold decided that this specific moment, with Durant in a vulnerable position and the Rockets losing and the crowd feeling the specific electricity of an unexpected competitive advantage, was the right time to cross whatever line Durant's patience sets as the threshold for public response. The one-liner Durant delivered before disappearing into the tunnel cannot be repeated here in precise terms, but it was graphic, it was immediate, and it was exactly the response that anyone who has observed Durant's public behavior across 2 decades of professional competition would have predicted from a man whose competitive sensitivity is calibrated in a way that makes the specific provocations of opposing fan bases feel genuinely personal rather than contextually trivial. The specific comedy of Kevin Durant, a player who allegedly maintained anonymous social media accounts to respond to criticism while publicly claiming competitive indifference, being unable to walk past a single fan without a verbal response is not lost on anyone paying attention. Thinking about it carefully, the Durant fan interaction is the small human moment that reveals more about his psychological state entering Game 2 than any injury update or organizational press release could, because a player who is frustrated enough to respond to individual heckling in a building he's just lost in. On the night his team went down 1-0 with his knee wrapped and his mobility limited, is a player who arrives at Tuesday with the specific competitive desperation that historically produces either transformative performances or compounding errors depending on whether the physical capacity matches the emotional intensity. The Luke Kennard versus Gabe Vincent comparison is the specific analytical footnote that makes the Pelinka offseason narrative complete rather than simply satisfying. Because in a single 40-minute playoff game, Kennard produced more scoring output than Vincent managed across the entirety of his 2 playoff runs in a Lakers uniform. And the specific numbers that describe Vincent's playoff career in Los Angeles are so consistently poor that the trade that sent him to Atlanta in exchange for Kennard has aged from a reasonable personnel decision into one of the more one-sided acquisitions in recent franchise history. Vincent played 10 playoff games as a Laker. He averaged 2.1 points per game. He shot 30.8% from the field and 25% from three-point range across those appearances. Numbers that are not just below average, but actively counterproductive for a player whose entire organizational role was defined around perimeter shooting and floor spacing. His true shooting percentage across those playoff appearances was 40.4%, which is a figure that belongs in the discussion of the worst sustained playoff shooting performances by a player in a designated shooter role in recent memory. Kennard has not missed a three-point attempt in a Lakers playoff game yet, a streak that will not last forever, but that captures the specific shooting quality differential between the player who left and the player who arrived. Kennard's 44.8% from 3 during the regular season as a Laker aligns with his career average of 44.2%, which means the Game 1 performance was not a statistical outlier from a player who normally shoots at an average level, but a confirmation of a player who normally shoots at an elite level and who delivered on that standard in the highest stakes environment available. The connection to Rob Pelinka's broader off-season decision-making is the one that deserves the specific praise it has not always received, because the choice to decline the $52.7 million Finney-Smith extension, pivot to LaRavia, use the resulting flexibility to acquire Ayton and Smart, and then trade the placeholder for a shooter into the specific solution of Kennard represents a sequence of organizational decisions that each individually looked reasonable, and that collectively produced the exact competitive result they were designed to produce. I believe the Kennard-Vincent comparison is the organizational vindication that Pelinka earned on Saturday night that no pre-game narrative gave him credit for building, and that the specific quality of the Game 1 shooting performance, delivered by a player connected to LeBron for 15 years, is the most accurate available summary of what thoughtful roster construction looks like when it works exactly as the organization designed it. The Rob Pelinka vindication story is ultimately the offseason narrative that the Game 1 win tells most completely, because every major decision Pelinka made in the summer that preceded this playoff run contributed to the specific competitive result produced on Saturday night. And the specific player who did not contribute at all to the result was the one the organization was criticized most intensely for failing to retain. Dorian Finney-Smith signed a 4-year, $52.7 million deal with the Houston Rockets in free agency. The same Houston Rockets who lost Game 1 by 9 points without Kevin Durant, while DFS sat at the end of the bench and did not enter the rotation in a game his organization desperately needed to win. The players Pelinka chose instead, Jake LaRavia as the immediate replacement, DeAndre Ayton as the interior anchor, Marcus Smart as the organizational leader, all contributed meaningfully to the Game 1 victory in exactly the roles the organization designed for them. Smart had 15 points and 8 assists and provided the vocal defensive leadership that the team's competitive identity is built around. LaRavia played his connective tissue role in the defensive scheme without the specific individual mistakes that cost possessions. Ayton had 19 points and 11 rebounds and produced the best individual performance of his Lakers tenure in the highest stakes game his new franchise has played without its 2 best players. The specific contrast between DFS sitting on the Houston bench in a game his team lost and Smart organizing the defensive rotations that held Houston to 37.6% shooting is the most direct available image of what Pelinka's offseason was actually building toward. And the fact that it materializes in a playoff game against the specific team that paid DFS the money that created the organizational flexibility to build the alternative makes the narrative almost too neat to be entirely coincidental. I believe the Game 1 win is the most complete single-game vindication of an NBA general manager's off-season decision-making available in recent playoff history. Not because one game proves anything conclusively, but because the specific players involved, the specific opponent, and the specific competitive result align so precisely with the organizational vision Pelinka was articulating when he made decisions that generated widespread skepticism among the same fan base that is now celebrating the outcome those decisions produced. Marcus Smart comparing this Lakers team to his 2018 Boston Celtics is the specific statement that deserves more analytical attention than it has received in the immediate post-Game 1 coverage. Because Smart is not making a casual motivational comparison, but a specific and considered parallel between 2 organizational situations that share a deeper structural resemblance than the surface-level circumstances suggest. The 2017-18 Celtics lost Gordon Hayward in the first minute of the first game of the season and lost Kyrie Irving to a knee injury in the playoffs. A team that was expected to contend for an Eastern Conference title suddenly stripped of its 2 most important players and required to compete at maximum intensity against quality opponents with a roster that was collectively younger and less experienced than anyone had anticipated needing. That Celtics team went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Smart knows what it looks like when a team without its stars finds a specific competitive identity, built around collective resilience, defensive intensity, and the specific refusal to accept the diminished expectations the outside world assigns to a roster that no longer looks the way it was supposed to look when the season began. The specific statement that this Lakers situation is the equivalent of that 2018 season. That the loss of Doncic and Reeves is the organizational parallel to losing Hayward and Irving, and that the competitive response available to this group is the same kind of collective resilience that took a young Boston team further than anyone projected, is the most encouraging possible framing from the player who has both lived that specific experience and observed this specific group closely enough to make the comparison with analytical rather than purely emotional conviction. The caveat is obvious. The 2018 Celtics had Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as young ascending stars capable of carrying offensive loads that the current Lakers do not have in the same developmental profile. And LeBron James at 41 is a categorically different primary option than either of those players in their mid-20s. But the organizational character Smart is describing, poised when the game gets chippy, resilient when the 2 best players are unavailable, dangerous precisely because everyone remaining is competing without a safety net, is real and visible and demonstrated on Saturday night in ways that Smart's specific praise was designed to recognize and reinforce. I believe Smart's 2018 Celtics comparison is the most strategically important statement any player on this roster has made about this team's competitive identity since the injury crisis began, because it establishes the collective self-image around which the remaining games in this series and potentially this entire playoff run will be organized, and that the specific culture Smart has been building through vocal leadership and organizational tone setting since arriving in Los Angeles is the foundation that made Game 1 possible when every external projection said it should not have been. Adam Silver saying LeBron is doing things 25-year-olds cannot do is the specific institutional statement that closes the week's narrative in the most complete possible way. Because the NBA commissioner speaking on a radio program about a specific active player's performance level and future plans is not casual commentary, but a carefully considered endorsement from the person most directly invested in the competitive and commercial health of the sport that LeBron has defined for 2 decades. Silver said he has every indication that LeBron plans to keep playing next year. He said that LeBron is not hanging on, that he is playing at an incredibly high level and doing things that players 20 years younger are not doing. The 8 first-quarter assists in a playoff game at 41 years old is the specific contemporary evidence that Silver was describing with his observation about 25-year-olds. Because 8 assists in a single quarter of a playoff game is not the contribution of an athlete managing decline with competitive intelligence. It is the contribution of an athlete whose basketball instincts and physical capacity are still operating at a level that produces outputs most players at any age cannot match in any single quarter of any regular season game. The LeBron future conversation, complicated by the Athletics reporting that retirement is a genuine possibility, simplified by Windhorst's financial analysis that no other team can offer him comparable money, and emotionally anchored by his statement that playing with Bronny in a playoff game is the craziest thing that has ever happened to him in 23 years, is not resolved by Silver's endorsement, but is meaningfully contextualized by it. A commissioner who says publicly that he has every indication a player is returning is a commissioner who has made organizational inquiries sufficient to generate that confidence. And the specific quality of Saturday's performance against Houston is the most recent and most visible piece of evidence that Silver's confidence is rooted in competitive reality rather than institutional wishful thinking. I believe LeBron returns to the Los Angeles Lakers for a 24th NBA season, that the specific combination of the Game 1 performance and the Bronny playoff moment and the March run that The Athletic reported may have effectively made his decision creates the complete competitive and human case for staying in Los Angeles, and that the specific version of this franchise heading into next season, with a healthy Doncic and Reeves, with Kennard's shooting, with Smart's leadership, and with whatever center and wing upgrades Pelinka adds in the offseason, is the version that makes the Riley comparison smart, was already using sound less premature than it does right now.